this brings me to my presentation. So aside from being from Australia, you're probably thinking, you know, who is this guy? You know, a lot of people know Ty, a lot of people know Glenn. On the other side of the world, this is a bit of a sob story. You get left out of a lot of stuff because most of the interesting stuff's going on when I'm asleep. So I wake up and catch the tail end of a stream where someone's abusing Bridget in Teespring News again, and, you know, or someone's, you know, having some sort of argument with someone else. But I miss a lot of that, a lot of the goings on that happen day to day. I miss a lot of webinars. I have to watch replays of webinars because, you know, like, I can get up at 2 in the morning and watch it, but I don't know how much of it I'm going to remember by the next day, so I'm better off watching a replay. So I work on filling information gaps in our business, and this is primarily in the Europe market. US, it's Facebook holds a lot of data. It has a lot of there's a lot for it to work on within the US, and I'll get to it about one of the questions I asked Maria was when are they going to buy the third-party data for all the other countries except for the US, and I'll explain what that is to you later on during my presentation. But so basically, who am I? I've been in the internet marketing space for about 5 years. I don't come from a tech background. The last 3 years I've spent doing what I call direct response marketing. We're evolving now where we've got access to our leads and we're developing better systems, and, you know, we're going to have upsells of mugs and we're going to have carts and we're going to have all these sorts of things that give us an advantage, that keep a customer. But my past career is sort of transferring my skills from my past career into this space is where my strength is. That's why I'm not a creative person at all. I didn't come from a sales background. I was actually a police officer for 17 years. The last 10 of that, I was a detective, and for the last 5 of that, I was a homicide detective. And due to health reasons, I had to leave. And it's a scary proposition when you're a police officer and all of a sudden they say you can't do that job anymore, and you've only known that life since you were 19 years old. You shit, you know, I've got 3 kids, you know, a beautiful wife, and all of a sudden you can't do that job anymore, and it's the only thing you know how to do. And once you're not a copper anymore, you know, as not a cop, once you're not a police officer anymore, you can't be anything else, except a security guard maybe, and that just didn't appeal to me. 1, because I think it's a crap job, but 2, look at me, I wasn't the intimidating police officer. I didn't come in and crack heads and, you know, stand over people and intimidate them and interrogate them. I was the analytical guy. I was the one that used to find criminals. I used to use a lot of different resources, have a lot of different informants, a lot of different networks within the community, and I used to find people that didn't want to be found and never left a trail behind. And we used to find them, bad people. So this is the investigative process that I then transfer across to marketing and doing Facebook research for our advertising. So as a detective, a crime would occur, we'd look for evidence, whether it be direct or circumstantial, just like they do in the TV shows. It's just not quite as cool. We'd collate the evidence and we'd look at what information gaps there are. So we'd go, right, this is what we've got. This is a profile of a person we're looking for. What gaps do we need to fill in order to find that person? So we'd have all our physical evidence, we'd have what we could find at the scene. Then we'd fill those information gaps using different strategies. Now, every police officer does it differently and everyone's got their own little strategies and what works for them. What works for some guys that are like 6'6" and 150 kilos is they go and stand over little guys and the little guys give them the information. I used to have to go and find I had other methodologies to find these things. I used to pay informants to get information. I used to go and execute search warrants on government databases. I used to do all this legwork that there was nothing glamorous about it. It was, there's no sliding across bonnets of cars and throwing coffees out a window. It was sitting behind a computer and finding stuff. And I would use that evidence to find an offender. Now that offender, they didn't want to be found, especially for the last 5, they never want to be found anyhow, but the last 5 years I was looking for murderers. You find a murderer, they're going to jail for the rest of their life, so they don't want to be found. They're not leaving a little trail behind saying, hey Dan, if you're good enough you can find me. They don't want to be found. So what I found was that I was really good at that. I started getting into internet marketing, this direct response marketing, in that all I was doing now was I was finding customers. But these customers don't try and hide. You just got to know where to look for them. And you've got to fill in those information gaps. Well, those information gaps aren't as hard to fill because they leave a trail behind because they're not trying to hide who they are. A lot of them are very proud of who they are. They like to tell the world who they are. They fill in all their information on Facebook. All this native data we all fill out to get a Facebook login, it's all there for us to use. You just got to use it in the right way. So let's look at it from a Facebook marketing point of view. So the crime occurs is similar to you launching a campaign in a new niche. So you've got to fill in all that. You've got to go and look for the evidence that's there. So let's, as an example, you go to Audience Insights and you start digging around and you start trying to look for what evidence there is, whether it be interest or demographics or where they live. And if it's in America or if it's in the United States, you can even tell whether they're a homeowner or whether they rent or whether they earn a certain amount of money, how many kids they've got. All this sort of information is held on them. There's all this native data that's available to us. So I'd collate all this information. For years, that's pretty much what most courses, what most coaches and courses showed you to do, was go into Audience Insights, pop in these few things, get these interests, go and put those interests in your ads. Those ads will go in front of the right people and they'll buy your shit. It works to a point. It doesn't work so well now because there is 100 times as many people doing the same thing because we've all done the same courses, all listened to the same people. If we're all doing the same thing, we're all going to get the same results, which is average. And you're very rare, and this is the thing to pick up on, is that Ty didn't get up here and talk about how he researches interests. He talks about how he's a step ahead of the game. Okay? He would have done this to start with, am I correct? Exactly. But it's what you do and the next stage about filling these information gaps to get even better at marketing. And that's what separates the copycats or the small sellers from the guys that sell a lot. Now, the reason that the guys that, sometimes you look at it and there'll be one shirt sold 5,000 and there'll be an exact copy of it that sold 100. And you're thinking, why is that? My theory is they're stopping at this point. The copycats are copying your design. They're getting to this point, which is all this, it's all free information online now. Everyone knows that you use Audience Insights to find the interest, demographics, target it, put the ads up. They're selling 100 because it's a good design. It already sold 5,000. It's what these other guys are doing, like Ty, like myself, like Glenn, what we're doing past that stage, like a lot of the other big sellers that are in the room here. So the question I asked Maria was about third-party data. Now, this was the detective coming out in me. I was targeting a campaign to I wanted to do United Kingdom, but I accidentally selected United States. So I'm in Audience Insights and I'm clicking around. This is one of the first campaigns that I'd ever run to the United Kingdom, where I was wanting to do my research through Audience Insights, the same way that we start, like we're saying, it's the start of a campaign. So I get in there and I'm looking around. I can see who in America is a homeowner, how much money they earn, how many kids they have, whether they like to shoot guns, all the different stuff that they're collecting data on. What Maria was saying is that they buy that data, that third-party data, from these companies, Axicom, Datalogics, Epsilon. There's probably more, but fundamentally that's what they tell us they're buying it from when you go into Audience Insights. So it gives us, Audience Insight gives us the native data of what the user does. Okay, so these things here, they put in their age, their gender, if they're truthful. If they put in their age, their gender, their relationship status, People always put in whether they're married because if they don't, their wife nags at them. And if they break up, they want to change their status really quickly to single. They put in their education level, their job role if they're proud of it. All these sorts of things. This is what the user puts in. This is the native data that we have access to. And a lot of people don't use it. We just go to the interests and we overlook this stuff. But this stuff's gold. Like this is the customer telling you what they do, where they've been, what they like. So use it. Now the third-party data that they buy, which now is available, is it going to be rolled out or is it just have to ask for it to be whitelisted on your account? I'll get to the next slide and I'll get you to try and point out exactly where we might be able to find it now. But for quite some time, for the last 2 years we've been selling in Europe, we didn't have access to that. So we had a workaround for it. And this was the big barrier for a lot of people to getting into the American market. They're like, why what I do in the States doesn't work in the UK? Why can't I just replicate what I do there to there? It's because, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Maria, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, they bought this third-party data for the United States, but they didn't have it for Europe. Now look at some of the stuff they're buying here. This third-party data is, like when you've got a credit card rewards program, or you go to the shop and you're part of a loyalty program, they are collecting information on you. Yes, you get a reward, but you're giving your information to them about patterns of spending, who you are, what area you spend money in, what you like to buy, what you like to do, okay? How many of these things do you think would be really, really important if you're trying to sell shirts to them? I'm going to say most of them. Purchase in the market for a vehicle, okay, that's not relevant to us. Purchase behaviour, online purchases, retail spending, spending methods, household size, household income, all of these things are pretty relevant in the e-commerce realm. They're all there for the States, but they didn't exist for Europe or anywhere else. Well, when we were selling for Europe, they didn't exist. So this is what I got. Only up until before I got on the plane 4 days ago and I did the slides, and obviously targeting United Kingdom. If you can't read that, it says this data is currently only available for audiences in the US. So I was looking for purchase data. If I'm targeting the US, all that information's there. So I can look at their patterns of behaviour. And this is that digging deeper. This is more than just looking at what pages they like. This is like, it's pretty key that you know your market. Are they going to spend online? What do they buy when they're online? That sort of stuff's really important. Now apparently it's being whitelisted, and that's great. Okay, so it's going to change our tactic of how we approach things, because Facebook has more information that will get fed into the algorithm that in turn will find more customers for us. Whereas if the algorithm's trying to find customers, but it doesn't know it's online purchases, it's purchase behaviour, it's retail spending, or it's spending methods, well, you're going to think that it's not going to be as optimised. Common sense tells you that. It's not going to work as efficiently as it would for the US, because it's got all this information on the audiences in the US. Again, sorry to keep saying it, as Ty said, in 6 months' time, a lot of this will be irrelevant. Today, I've learned that this is changing. The day before I got on the plane to come here, which was Wednesday, they rolled out another change that appeared on my account that now allows you to create lookalike audiences for other countries based on information that you hold for argument's sake, the US. So if you've got a niche page in the US, previously you couldn't create a lookalike audience off that niche page for, let's say, Germany, because you didn't have 100 fans from Germany. You only had fans from the US. You might have had some from other places. But now the functionality is there to build a lookalike audience from your United States niche page. How it marries up the data, how it finds the similarities, I don't know. It's brand new, I've got to test it. But it's just an example of how the landscape constantly changes and you need to keep digging around and finding this stuff. Okay, now I'm not going to reiterate what's already been said. Niche-specific business pages, we use them to build assets from the page. We want to look alike audience of those people that are on that page. It's one method that we have to, scale out our campaigns. Let Facebook do the legwork for you instead of you paying your money to go and find these people. Let the algorithm work for you. But more importantly, what we've got to remember is that people on these pages, they're real people. You see some pages, they just ignore their customers. There'll be message after message, post after post, comment after comment, and they don't care. All they're doing is they're just selling to them. If you create a community, you can create multiple lookalike audiences from your pages using the new method. We used to do it by using page insights and seeing where all our fans were based. So use that niche-specific business page as an investigative tool to find what your customers like. You'll put a meme up and, if it within an hour goes to 50,000 people, it's a fair chance you could probably put that on a shirt and sell it. All right, now this is another thing that I like to do And there's no tool to be able to do this. There's no functionality within Facebook or external software that allows you to do this. So what I like to do is I like to spy on other people. Don't like their page because they'll know you're spying on them. Go and spy on big pages in your niche. How do you do that? Go to the page, find a product that's selling really well, has a group of passionate fans, start researching the comments. When you're researching the comments, look for buyer and passionate keywords within the comments. Okay, now, this is not a new concept. This is one that's been around for a while, but people don't do it. Read the comments and then go in there and look for your buyer-related keywords. So here's a list of buyer-related keywords. They're saying they've already got it or that they love it. Okay, there's also passion keywords. We've tried to, if someone can create a bit of software that would allow us to filter this out and find all these comments, it'd be much easier. So all I did was went through on one of our posts, and you find all this information on there. Okay? Now, you might ask, why am I doing this? Why am I finding these buyers and these passionate people? Because like Maria said, just because she liked Kanye 2 years ago doesn't mean she likes him now. So what you want to find is these mad people. They're madly passionate about this niche. And you look at it. Got my tea and sweatshirt, ace. It's arrived, thanks. So true, I need one of these. Got it and it fit perfectly. So these top three over here, they're buyers. These are passionate. I want one, loving it, it's a must-have. So true, I need one of these. Then go into their profile. If their profile is not set to private, you can find out what they like. Now, as an example, it took me 2 minutes. I typed in for a page, I love horses. It just popped up. Their first thing on there was a bracelet. The second comment was, hey, Tiffany Tarter, have you got this one yet? She goes, no, but I've got all the others. I'm going to have to get this one. I then open up her page, look at what she likes. The top 6 things that are there, and I think she liked 500 pages. You sit there and you scroll through that shit. You take the time and see if you can target these through audience insights. They're not always going to show up there, okay? Paint horse passion. I would never have thought to search for that for horses. I'm not in that niche. This is just an example. But you might find pages of passionate people that are in your niche that you've never even seen, never even heard of. So go through and find these people. Find what they like. Open up a heap of them and just keep working your way through it. Create yourself a list of these pages that people like and then go and target them. See if you can target them in audience insights. These are buyers in this niche that like these pages. They're very pre-qualified. Another nice thing that Facebook's introduced for us is an ability to see what has been recently used when you're going through and you're targeting. So this is another great feature. I don't know if you've all got it yet. It's only become available to me in the last 2 weeks. But I go into my niche-specific ad account and I go in there and I'm putting an ad. I'm putting some interest in. I'm trying to find some new targets, some new things. It then tells me when you hover over the interest that was over here, it tells you here there's that many people in there, and your past performance using this interest based on relative conversions and cost per conversions resulting from this option in your past campaigns, it's high. Do you think that'd be a good option to use? Of course it would. Facebook's telling you it's a good option to use. Conversely, there's other interests in there that I had been including, but as of 2 weeks ago, I'm not going to do that anymore because Facebook's telling me it's shit. Your past performance using this interest is low. They're giving you this information. If you don't have this, get on chat and ask for this because I'm not in beta for it or anything like that. It just popped up on my account, and we're in Australia. We're usually the last one to get these things. Has everyone got this function yet? Get on and ask for it. You don't have it? Oh. You've got it? Yeah, I don't know. I'm normally Australia's normally last to get everything for us. I won't delve into it too much, and it's probably very hard to see here, but you've bought a lot of data over the years in your niche. Let's say you're in the nurse niche. You've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars targeting to these nurses. You drill down into your data of what you've sold before on previous campaigns to get a better understanding of who your target audience is, who is converting, what devices are they converting on. So go into your reports, break it down by age and gender. Have a look at it. You might be surprised. Didn't quite align on there, but you can see 25 to 34-year-old males and 25 to 34-year-old females, I've got them converting at under $1. Whereas up here, one conversion for an 18 to 24-year-old male for $9.33. So get in there and have a look at it. The information's all there for you. Same with the placement and device. This information's all there. You bought this data. It's yours to use. Again, on an iPad, on a mobile device, I had one conversion for $38.21. Yet, I can get 13 conversions on an iPod for 21 cents a conversion. I can get 11 conversions for $1.24. Better still, I get 109 and 159 conversions for like $1.50 on an iPhone and an Android smartphone. Where am I going to be pushing all my ad spend? Next time I set up an ad, where am I going to be targeting? Am I going to waste my time going, well, maybe I should try an iPad again, or maybe I should try desktop again and see if it works this time? No. This is telling you not to do that. Be smart. Put up the right, you're given the right information, target it the right way. I'm not going to go through pixels. Ty's covered that fantastically. Again, I'm stoked that he comes up and says the same things. We're on a very similar page with it, so that's great. What I will go through is, I'll just skip through this. We've talked enough about lookalike audiences. Probably a lookalike audience that I like to create as well that we haven't covered is I like to create a buyer custom audience of, so people that land on the Teespring thank you page. I have a big collective custom audience of buyers. Initially when I did it, it was to exclude them from retargeting campaigns or exclude them from, seeing the same ad if they'd already bought that shirt. But with the information gaps that existed in Europe, especially in a lot of the smaller countries where it's very hard to find these people, as been brought up, sometimes you'll put in 4 or 5 targets in there and you get an audience of 12,000 people for a niche that there's way more people in that country that are passionate about it. You just can't find them. So what I decided to do was, and I don't know if anyone else is doing this or if it's unique or if it's new to you, but I create lookalike audiences from my buyer custom audience because up until I found out today, Facebook didn't hold that third-party data on purchase behaviour and online spending. So I had bought that data. I then put it back into the Facebook ads machine so that it created lookalike audiences of people who had bought shirts online. Does that make sense? And this is why I asked with Maria, why does it confuse the algorithm when you have a lookalike audience with the interest? Because this buyer custom audience is a big pool of all the people that have purchased across all the different niches for me. I was creating an audience of buyers, of online purchases of t-shirts. No, it wasn't separated by niche, it was just an online buyer of t-shirts. And what I do is I layer them with the specific interest that we've researched and that we've found, because I'm telling Facebook, here's the lookalike audience of online buyers, but I want them to be narrowed by the niche that I'm in. And that was the way I filled the information gap within Europe, because Facebook at that time didn't hold the data on the online spending behaviour of the customers in Europe. So I would give it to it, and then I would layer it with our interests. Now, it works, and it works really well, and we've done it for quite some time. Now, it obviously doesn't work as well as it potentially could if there was no interest there, but we had no way of actually getting that lookalike audience up there, if we just put that up there, it'd just be targeting, you wouldn't know who to target, it wouldn't know who to put the right thing in front of. We've talked about what's required, that they're dynamic, they're going to continually grow. Just some other little takeaways. So we always use, unless it's the buyer custom audience, we always say don't use lookalike audiences with interests. The only time we did do it, and I'll show you one other example of why we do it, we look at splitting when we're scaling by gender, device, age, ad placement, which is the information that I showed you based on Ads Manager. In Europe, the fortunate thing is, and Ty's presentation showed you that he had lookalike audience up to about 3%. Because at about 3%, correct me if I'm wrong, you'd be at about 3 million as an audience in the US. Yep. So it's a pretty big audience. By the time you get up to 10%, it's a huge audience. But in Europe, you know, as an example, in Germany, you go up to 10% lookalike audience in Germany, and your audience is only 300,000 big. You know, that's a good target audience, and you let that algorithm find those customers within there for you, and it works really well. So don't let language be a barrier to you in Europe. Okay, there are a lot of English-speaking customers. There are a lot of customers that buy just English-related products. We use English ad copy, and it works. It works really well. Another strategy we used was, if you can't find enough interests, for argument's sake, let's say you want to target bikers in Sweden, or wherever. Create a fan page, target Sweden, get likes to that page based on the very small amount of interest that there are. Get 100 fans in Sweden, use that as a seed to then create a lookalike audience in Sweden of people who like bikes. So you've gone then from a target audience of maybe 12,000 people to a lookalike audience that's up to about 300,000 people. That is like uncharted territory. There's not, can you put your hands up in the room? Is anyone doing that to get more interest in Europe? So we've got 4 people. Again, Ty said, if only 4 people, only a small amount of people are doing it, it's probably worth doing, probably worth looking into. Okay? Now you can see how effective that could be. But the only downside to it is you've got a lot of clickers, you've got a lot of tie kickers that you're building your lookalike audience off. So what we were doing then is, because they're people who like bikes that like our bike page, I would layer them with interests like online shopping, or layer it with sites such as Teespring. So I would narrow that lookalike audience down, because I had a lookalike audience of people that liked a particular page with a particular interest, but I'd done nothing more to pre-qualify them as a buyer. So what I'm doing is pre-qualifying them with big e-commerce sites like Teespring and Etsy, Amazon, eBay, those sorts of things. You know, these people it's not a new experience to them to buy stuff online. So it's just another way to potentially target people and to filter through from the time wasters to the actual buyers. Probably the other thing that it's not done very much is translate your designs. Hook up with someone that speaks another language, find someone on Upwork or Fiverr or whatever, translate it. Get your design translated and then go and put it in that country. Get your ad copy translated, go sell it in that country. This doesn't have to always be in English. Yep.
Do you also do that
Pardon?
if you have no sales in a campaign? For example, do you still charge translation?
Not usually, no. We've got a pretty big test audience of English-speaking people, and if the design's not resonating within a niche, then unless it's something that's very geographically specific to that country, then I probably wouldn't try it. What we usually do is, if we get something that sells well in English, roll it out in French, German, Italian, Dutch, you know, like, it's easy. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to come up with a new idea. You don't have to come up with a new niche. You just have to just get it translated. Make sure you do it properly. It helps that I've got Luke. He's got some good contacts over here. family, friends, stuff like that do the translation for us, because there can be some garbage ones coming through. And if someone says to me, that's translated in Italian, I'm going to go, oh, okay, I don't really know. Not until you start getting the comments that tell you that this shirt makes no sense. So get it translated. You've probably got 1,000 designs that you've sold. They're all in English. Get it translated, get your ad copy translated, and get them and target them in the other countries. All right, now just as a wrap up for me, before we get into if anyone's got any questions, I thought this was important. Sometimes we feel like we're getting a bit of lip service from Teespring about the efforts that they're making behind the scene with the marketplace and stuff like that. Now, when they say that they were testing their Teespring demand generation campaigns, they actually were, and I really noticed it and approached them and asked them what the hell was happening, because I was getting shitty conversion on my ads, but we were selling 300 shirts a day. And what was happening was Teespring were testing their boosted sales program through emails and retargeting, whatever else they were doing. Now it was just for the US, it was just for a short period of time, and I'd love to see it rolled out in EU as well, because that's where about 80% of our business is. But SPS is sold by seller, SPT sold by Teespring. Basically, we saw a 13% increase or a 32% profit as a result of the efforts. Teespring pushed through another 13,000 worth of sales for us without us having to do anything. Now, there's not too many other platforms that are going to do that for you. So, yes, we all have our moments of flirting with ideas of moving on to different platforms and doing, taking total control of it, but they are making some efforts here. So, I just thought that it was important that as a seller, I can say, hey, I've actually benefited from what they're telling us they're going to do. So, and imagine this is about 20% of our business over 3 months. If they were doing it in Europe for us as well, it'd be great. I know the first thing that I'll be doing when I go back is relaunching old shirts and making sure that every time I put a shirt up, it's on a continuous relaunch. Leave it sitting there. Okay, again, it's not about hiding what we do and trying to just give you guys a little bit of what we do. It's what we do. We don't hide anything. So, and that's the end of us. Anyone got any questions? Oh, yep. Yeah, so it depends what I'm creating the lookalike audience from. Sorry, he was asking, when I create a lookalike audience, how do I decide what to intersect that lookalike audience with? Now, it all depends on what the lookalike, what you're basing that lookalike audience on. What is that asset or that seed that you're using to base that lookalike audience on? And we've all learned some stuff today from Maria as well about what works best within their test environment. If I'm creating a lookalike audience from a niche specific pixel, then I don't need to layer it with anything, especially now with the new features they got where you can just roll out to another country. I've got to test it and see how well it works. The reason that I was layering my lookalike audiences with online spending or Teespring or Amazon or something like that is just to further pre-qualify that audience, because I was creating those lookalike audiences on very small pages that I was just trying to get people, for argument's sake, in Sweden that are interested in motorcycles. I wanted them to get through and click, and as soon as I had 100 fans, I'd create that lookalike audience, because trying to target those people that like motorcycles in Sweden, the best I could do was come up with an audience of 10,000 people, which is garbage. You're never going to make a living doing that. You might sell a few, but the reality is you need more. And there's more than 10,000 people that like motorcycles living there. You know that. It's common sense. The data just wasn't there. So that's why we would buy that data through getting page likes and then feed it back into the system. But then my issue was, well, these people they like this interest, but are they a buyer? So I'd layer it with a buying related interest. So, and it's just about testing and see what works for you and your niche. Like, there's no right or wrong answer, but if we all do the same shit and no one ever tries new things, then we're never gonna, we'll all be at the same level. So, spend a bit of your money, and it's not going to cost you much because there's no competition there. Like no one else, no one's competing with you to target bikers because it's very hard to do, or nurses, or whatever it might be. So spend a bit of money. You won't need to spend much. You'll get cheap likes, create that lookalike audience, and then just start getting it rolling and just test it. But the more money you spend, the more data you're buying, the more chance it gives you to be able to make educated decisions when it comes to the marketing. Yep. No, that was one ad set. So that was one ad set of about, I think it might have been 400 within it. So, yeah, about yeah, within an ad campaign. So, and this is just all about testing. You saw the dates on those ones. That was from middle or beginning of last year. What worked then doesn't work now. And I wouldn't create 400 ad sets now because of the overlap and the penalties and the relevance and competing with yourself in the same space. But 18 months ago, it worked great. With subtle differences. It wasn't, it was different ad copy, it was different imagery, it was, there was a lot of different things going into these. It was one big campaign that we ran, and it still runs to this day. So it obviously doesn't convert that low anymore, but it's been running for 18 months. Sure. We probably do 80-20. 80 for the US. Oh no, 80 for Europe. 20 for the United States. It's an easy one for me. I've got a business partner that lives in Europe. He can see trends happening in Europe. He speaks 3 languages. His wife speaks another language. His friends speak other languages. So I've got access to these resources, which is hard. Now, as an Australian, we don't sell a lot in Australia for various reasons that I won't get into. But I'm faced with 2 choices. Do I either become very good at looking at American culture, where there are all these big, really good marketers already competing in that space, or do I go and learn other cultures over in Europe, where there's nowhere near as much competition? Just taking the path of least resistance. There are complexities to it. Facebook didn't hold all the data for a long time. You've got language barriers. Sometimes I get regions mixed up, like within state, different regions within different countries. I make those mistakes, but it's all part of the learning process. So the other thing I do find, and I urge you to do it, is that it's a hell of a lot cheaper to advertise there. There's not as much competition for that advertising space. So, or take a campaign that you've run well in the States and see if you can run it over there. Scale out a current campaign over there. It's the only thing we do is if we are going to do it in the US, I will never send people from the Teespring US site. I will never send traffic from Europe to Teespring US because of the delivery and the turnaround and there's the VAT that when it comes into the certain countries, it just kills the conversion. So, Teespring have a facility in Europe that you can send all your people there. So it means we launch 2 campaigns, but if it's a good design, it's a good design, and that's how we scale it out to different countries. Yeah.
What really basic advice would you give to a complete beginner starting from now today?
Just be like a sponge and be prepared to lose, but don't look at it as losing to start with. You might get lucky and the second or third campaign you put up is profitable. Look at it as you're starting a business, treat it as a business. You've got to invest money in a business. A bricks and mortar business, you'd probably need $100,000 to start up. By the time you go through the cost of staffing, products, location, all those sorts of things. Get a little bit of money behind you, invest in yourself. So I don't look at, whenever we have a campaign that flops or I lose, we lose a couple of $100 or a few $100 on a campaign, I don't look at it as a loss. I look at it as a lesson, like, what did I do wrong? So I've paid $300 to learn a lesson. Still a hell of a lot cheaper than starting up a bricks and mortar business and trying to do the same thing and learn those lessons. So see those losses as lessons and just don't make the same mistake twice. Go, rightio, well, that didn't work, but I learned. I've also probably built up some good data here. Whether it's good to help you sell or whether it's good to tell you don't do that again, it's still data that you can use. So just be prepared to lose a bit. It's a lot more competitive now. Listen to the guys that not only talk, there's a lot of loudmouths in the industry that don't back it up. Listen to guys with a proven track record that are helpful. You'll get a lot further. Join as many groups as you can and just listen and learn and, be a sponge. But be prepared to lose a little bit to start with. We pretty much all did. But you come through the other side and look at it as an investment, as a business. It's not quick cash, it's not an easy way to make a buck. It's still work. And just treat it as that. Another question? It's entirely up to you. Sorry, the question was, if you have 10 niches that you want to start shortly, how would you prioritise which ones to do? And there's an adage that I sort of live by, is that my advice would be start one. Pick one and do that one well. Once you've done that well, then replicate that to the next one and the next one. If you start 10 all at once, you'll probably do 10 things average. If you start one and do it well, you'll do that one really well. Then you move on to the next one, you'll do that one really well. So instead of being a handyman that can do a little bit of everything, you become like a tradesman that's really good at one thing. And then you then take that skill and you become really good at another thing. So we've got a thing in Australia, we call it, don't try and be a jack of all trades. And what that means is don't try and do everything all at once. Just do one thing really well and move on to the next thing. Does that make sense? You just got to test it. I'm sure amongst those 10 you're passionate about one. Personally, you? No? Sorry? Is someone within your group passionate about any of the niches that you're in? Okay. That's usually a good start, is that if you were going to invest a fair bit of your time into something, it's a good place to start, is something that you're actually interested in yourself. It doesn't feel like a grind, it doesn't feel like hard work, because you're actually, you potentially could be part of that community and you actually enjoy it. So, but do your research. Look at what's selling online at the moment. If you look at a niche and it's got 300 I Love Nurse shirt pages, don't launch one in the nurse niche. Go and find one that's selling other products, that doesn't necessarily have to be apparel, but it can be some sort of novelty or passionate-based product. And you could fill a gap there. Like I said, the competition's not, don't fear the competition. They're telling you, that's telling you that there's buyers in that market. But don't try into a saturated market, especially when you're not passionate about yourself, because it won't get you very far. But take it in small chunks. Don't go, I'm going to launch 10 today. Like Luke and our success rides on the back of 2 very big ones. And that's where 80% of our time comes. 80% of our time is spent in those 2 big niches. If we had 10, we'd have 10 average, instead of being, having 2 that you're an industry leader in. So, test them, bite it off in small chunks. When you find one that's working, concentrate on it. The others will always be there. Get really good at that one, and then replicate that for the others. Any other questions before we finish? Yep.
When you started Nikas, it was like 5 years.
Yep.
How much time did you spend?
depends what the data holding is on what country I'm trying to start it in. So I'll always start looking in the United States because there's a lot of good information there. You know, I could spend a couple of days doing it before I even look at launching an ad. And that's not just sitting on audience insights on Facebook. That's looking across so many different social networks and going to a lot of different web pages. You know, some of your best interests aren't going to show up at the top of your audience insights for affinity with people. You know, some of your best ones are your old websites that have been established for quite some time. They just suck at e-commerce. But they've got this great following of people. They just don't market themselves very well. So you hit some of those up, target some of those people, you know, and look at, I mean, I'm happy to provide a list. There's a list of so many different categories that I'll search for online for anything from, let's say you're looking for a profession, you know, the very basic stuff like looking, are there any unions that they're members of? Is there courses that they do? Is there particular schools they have to go to? Is there particular, I don't know, tools that they have to use as part of their trade that's really unique to them? You know, that I look at, I don't even know what that tool does, but that person does. So look at those sorts of things. You know, really become that ideal customer and start searching around. Look online. Just start Googling shit that they would Google. You know, you find out that they need this particular tool, well then Google, where can I buy this? Where can I buy this tool in the United States? And all of a sudden up pop this obscure name of a company that has 100,000 followers that I never knew they sold that tool, but to that particular tradesman or that particular person, that's where they go. So you target it. You see what I mean? Like you can't just go and pick out all the pages, I love this, I love that, Nurses Rock, all this sort of stuff. Like that's cool, but go and find where they buy a stethoscope. Go and find where they buy their, you know, what magazines they subscribe to, those sorts of things. Anyone else? Because I'm losing my voice. You really dud it out with us. You got my partner sick up the back and I had no voice yesterday, so winning.